So Dave, I want to start off not talking about what district is, but turning the clock back to day zero. Okay, so the day before.
My birthday?
No, not that far back.
Okay.
Although, yeah, we'll get there. We'll see.
Okay.
You know,
I just
we'll
want to
pull
make
a
sure
couch up,
how far we're going back.
Yeah.
Okay, day zero of...
Day zero, yeah. So the day before, figuratively, you got the vision for this place.
Mm-hmm.
How were you spending your life? Where was your focus? Who were you back then?
So, it depends, right? There's a day in December when I sort of like had this aha moment for this particular place.
Right.
But the concept of doing something collaborative, bringing together creative people, business people in a single sort of collective is something that I thought of years ago. So it really depends on what you mean by day zero. But if you want to talk about December, I mean, I am a crazy entrepreneur. Like I love business. So what I was doing the day before was running digital surgeons, working on my clients' businesses. If I was doing any strategy on any particular clients, managing the folks here, and probably in some way, shape, or form looking at opportunities, whether it was a investment opportunity, a startup opportunity, or even a real estate opportunity. It could have been like that. Thinking about stuff. My brain's always sort of going.
Yeah.
That was day zero.
Okay. So then take us back to the original day zero. So when you first had this notion of a place like this, what were you doing that had that get triggered?
Well, you had sort of the space we worked in is considered the agency world. So it's sort of consultancy, design, service-based businesses. And I thought that the industry was changing. I wanted to figure out a way to sort of build a huge stable of talented people around us without having the overhead of a big agency with a lot of costs. And I thought that creative people wanted to be together, which is true. That was a decade ago, and today you see those studio houses, Erector Square, and so on and so forth, sort of happening. So I was just always looking at really hacking. Right, we didn't have any money.
Right.
So that you're talking about 10, 11 years ago, we literally had started Digital Surgeons with $5,000, and we had no, everything, every dollar we made went back into the business. So we were really hungry. Yeah. I think when you're hungry, you tend to think more outside the box, especially because you have to sort of figure out interesting ways to feed yourself, to grow your business. Especially in our particular situation, because we didn't want to take investor money and we didn't want to take on any debt, so we really wanted everything to be organic. So I think that allowed us to be more creative. I try to always live my life like that, though.
Yeah.
So
you're working with creatives. You're working in the agency world, and it's a traditional agency world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're seeing this kind of emergent need that at certain levels always been there for creatives to be together. Yeah. So what has you say, now let's fast forward to December, what has you say, I'm going to build that? What's the possibility that has you say, that's something I'm going to do versus something I'm going to wish would happen?
So I saw people doing, so when I thought of that 10 years ago, I actually tried to get it done. But I had to make a decision. So I went to the city, I found the property, I went to the city, and they said that they liked the idea. There were certain people inside the city of New Haven that I had sort of pitched this to. Right. And they said to me that they would back us in some way, shape, or form, whether that was through some tax credits or some funding or some facade program or some kind of government entity that they might be able to give us to drive some dollars to make it a more efficient, more lucrative investment for us to take the risk or to reduce the risk. The problem was at the time, it was 2006, 2007, 2008. So now you're talking about the real estate is just absolutely in the toilet. We're just starting the recession. and the landlord was super over leveraged on the building, and that we wanted to use, which was close enough to downtown, but outside. You'll notice a pattern where our offices have always been around the downtown instead of directly in the center. And I wanted to pay $700,000 for the building, and he wanted $1.5 million. So it just didn't work out. So it was a failure.
Yeah.
From there, things happened. The Grove happened. WeWork happened, and we saw sort of pieces of our puzzle start to come together, leading up to December. So you saw other people doing small parts of, whether it's co-working or bringing communities together or creative collective groups and that kind of thing. It was sort of happening in different ways.
Yeah. So people are innovating around some of the transactional aspects of what you saw, but the integrated thing,
no one had put it together.
No one put it together, right?
No way.
Okay. So December, 2014?
Yep.
13? 14?
14.
24. Okay, so December 2014, you guys had an office across the street.
Yep.
Okay. So what happens?
So the office across the street was owned by a father-son team out of Brooklyn, and they were neglecting the building, and it was just a bad situation. It was the second bad landlord that I had, which is another thing that's sort of driving, right? I'm starting to pick up on the fact that landlords can be very difficult, and they're some of them tend to be, overly capitalistic, meaning that they're very greedy. Some of them just don't give a shit, right? Maybe they're upside down on the property. Maybe something happened where you just never know people's why. So these guys were not investing in the building. They were being pretty shiesty about the stuff that they said that they were going to get done inside the property. They had a bad reputation that started to surface in Google through the reviews and that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden they put the building up for auction, and some other guy from New York comes in and buys it and immediately comes to us and says, hey, we're going to sell. I love you guys. You pay your rent all the time. You're growing, but we're going to turn this into a Costco. So I was immediately like, holy shit, this is bad, because I thought that the building was just awesome, right? It was high ceiling. It was like this: high ceilings, big windows, awesome view, all these sort of components that I really loved about it, right? It was very, very futuristic and modern, even though it was really, in bad shape. So I tried to sit down with the guy and I said, hey, listen, I've been around for a long time. I'm on the boards of economic development. I know what's missing in the state. And I basically just tried to give him a little bit of vision of what I had known I wanted to do. And he just sort of was like, that's a great idea, but I'm going to turn it into a Costco.
Right.
So I had 22 months on the lease. I'm the CEO of a business that's growing. I said, I got to move these guys. I got to think about it now, which is not what most people do. They just sort of wait till the very last minute and then hustle and just wind up in a bad situation. But I really believe that space is important. Like, we had really bad spaces, but they were always a little bit cooler than everyone else's bad spaces. So I had gone on a journey to start looking at spaces. Spaces to rent, spaces to buy. I didn't want a landlord anymore. And it was really difficult because there's not a lot of property in New Haven, at least here in New Haven, there's not a lot of property that was available that would make sense financially for us. Either because you had at the same time as this was happening, you had a housing boom in New Haven. So New Haven at one point had the highest occupancy rates for rental apartments in the country. So everybody wanted, once you hear that, the occupancy rates are the highest in the country, it's a trigger. Go in, buy property, make rentals, rent it out, rent out residential spaces. So commercial buildings started to turn into residential. That's when you see 360 State Street and the boom downtown on Crown and Corsair and the old Wells Fargo Bank. Everything turned into residential because they knew that they'd make a ton of money, and they have, right? Corsair sold, they made 20 million, and this and that. So you either had people that were holding on to buildings expecting to make a boatload of money on an exit, like just to hold on to it, or you had it's an old industrial space, New Haven, so you had a lot of dirty spaces too. So now you got to invest in remediation, which I didn't know nothing about. I didn't know nothing about real estate, to be honest with you. My father did bullshit real estate when I was young. He did. I mean, like, you know, in comparison, like, I shouldn't say bullshit. It was real estate. He was successful, but it was like onesie twosie apartments and buildings that he would flip and make money on. It wasn't like he was doing a $25 million development. So I had no idea what was going on. And then we were across the street. So I was looking at, that night, I think it was like December 14th of 2014. I was looking at the satellite image of this property from Google satellite. And I saw the river in the back and the highway on the side and the train on the side. And I said, holy, it's like an island. And it looks like a fulcrum between two neighborhoods, right? Like it's like a piece of land holding two completely different neighborhoods together, East Rock and Fairhaven. And I was fascinated by that. And then from there, it just, everything, a decade plus of research and people thinking and talking just sort of poured out in 10 minutes. Wow. And I called Eric and I was like, what do you think about this? Yeah. And he's a New Havener through and through, loves it here, did a ton of real estate here and lived here with his family. And he was just like, that's a dope idea. We should try and make that happen. And
yeah, no, just how you describe that, David, just what you saw in the aerial image, it's something I've just found over the years. A way I'd interpret it is you trained yourself how to see a certain way. And so, you've already just in this conversation in 10 minutes talked about, kind of bringing things together, bringing communities together, right? And that's how you see the visual, right? There's 1,000 ways you could see that aerial shot. And would you see it as a fulcrum between two neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Right? And I just find this pattern repeatedly. People train themselves how to see. And then some folks get locked into seeing that way, and some folks use that way of seeing to create. Right? Does that sit for you? That this is part of how you just see things, how to bring stuff together?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think that
was a slow pitch. Go ahead, hit that one out.
I think it's the Ray Dalio referred to it as the shaper, right? Sort of we've had this conversation before, so he's definitely leading in this conversation. So I always talk about the world is noisy, right? So you got billions of bits of data that's happening, energy, little signals that are happening to you all the time. And then those turn into studies say between 12 and say 70,000 thoughts. And a thought could be like, my foot's itching right now and I gotta scratch it or whatever it is. But that's per day. So if you tune into I always talk about tuning into frequencies, right? So like I'm tuning into opportunities, I'm tuning into the way in which people speak about the cities, the problems. I'll take those and I'll sort of connect them to the things that I'm hearing about in the state and the disconnections in the state and the disparities between the cities and the suburbs. And then I'm like, okay, so, and then it all sort of levers up to this one big image in my head, which is that Connecticut's this really disconnected community. So if you're going to connect communities, you can do it on these granular levels. So it's basically just connecting dots, right? It's like, oh, these go together, these go together, these go together. Let's group those and put them over here. And that sort of becomes the guiding light or the center point for the concept, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm basically just putting blinders on, and I just ignore a lot of bullshit. Right? I'm sorry for the cursing, by the way. I drop a lot of bombs. I'm being super good right now. So I don't see a lot of stuff, right? I don't see a lot of noise, right? People get caught up in noise. Yeah. Because I don't see a lot of noise, I connect dots super fast. Yeah. And that's just, I think that's a skill that I've honed over the years, obviously.
Yeah, that's great. I've always found that it's not the smartest person in the room that wins.
Yeah, because I'm
dumb as shit. It's not the most powerful person in the room that wins. Yeah. We're going to get back to that story and the bullshit real estate story too, but for a little later. It's not the smartest person in the room that wins. It's not the most powerful person in the room that wins. It's the person that's clearest and most committed. All right. And again, this is part of what I hear you saying. This kind of blinders. Right? I'm just clear. This is what I'm out for.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look for that. Yeah. So let me ask you a different question.
But I also know, but the thing is, like, the blinders can be dangerous to a lot of people too. So the part of it, because I hear people all the time say, like, where they just won't give up on an idea, but you can see that the idea is dead or that they don't have what it's going to take.
Yeah.
So there's this very sort of thin line between I'm going to bulldog this over the finish line versus I need to reevaluate.
Right.
Like if you hear this in the story, I had this idea 10 years ago and I pursued it for a little bit and I hit a wall and I knew it wasn't the right time. So I let it go. And then it came back, right? And it came back a lot easier because it was the right time. And you have so being able to realize when those times are happening, when things are starting to align. And we've talked about this a lot. Like I believe a lot in energy. Like I think that a lot of this stuff happens for a lot of for reasons. And I could tell you tons of stories of serendipity and luck, and I tweet about it and all this stuff. But I really, really believe that a lot has to do with the energy that I have and the stuff that I put out there, which I'm sure we're going to get to at some point.
Yeah, we'll get to it. There's something I want to get to later, but since you're raising it, I want to ask the question now. And you've spoken to it partly. What's the razor? How do you cut off? Like, so for example, I remember, a few months back, you were exploring an idea about putting a helicopter service in place to get rid of, pain in the neck to get from New York to here, yeah? So David hatches this idea. We got Sikorsky right next door. Let's have a helicopter service, 30 minutes back and forth, right? But I watched you hatch that, explore it, kill it in, I think, 6 days.
Yeah.
So what's the razor? How do you cut stuff like that off before it sucks up so much energy and time that it destroys something that's real?
I just go hard at it real fast, right? I want to prove or disprove it as quickly as possible in my mind, right? I don't fall. That's the key. A lot of people fall in love with their, they drink their own Kool-Aid. Versus me, I'm like, if this works, that's amazing. Yeah. Everybody's going to be happy. It's going to be a great asset to the community. It's another feather in my cap for what I've done for the community and then for the brand and all that stuff. So it's another great angle. Right. And if it's profitable, right? Yeah. It's a win. It's great. Right? Everybody wins. Yeah. And then I connected to the right people as soon as possible, and I made the time. Right? Like I always tell people, you have to make the time. It's like, if I say I want Al to do something, I want to ask Al a question. If I could send you an email, or I could literally pull my phone out right now and text you or call you in front of all these people and try and get the answer right now. Most people pace it out. I don't want my brain power to focus on it any more than it needs to do. So I'm just like, let me just get rid of this real quick, or see if I can get it to the next level. And truth be told is they emailed me like 2 weeks ago, not Sikorsky, but someone in Sikorsky that realized that there's another way to go about this, potentially, and she emailed me and said she was going to connect me with somebody to maybe get it done. So it's not 100, it's great. But you saw me like 6 days, and then I was like, I'm off it, and then all of a sudden 2.5 months later, it came back to me, and then maybe it dies again. I don't know.
Yeah. There's this chasing that people do instead of letting stuff come to them, right? And what you're speaking to is chase it hard, know when to quit, and if it's real, it's going to come back.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I love what you said, and I work in developing young practitioners, organizational practitioners, consultants, and one of the things that happens consistently, even before they started working, is they fall in love with their solutions, right? And what I'm hearing you say is, don't fall in love with your answer, fall in love with the problem, and then the solution, it's not going to work. Helicopter gone, next. Right? But fall in love with the problem. How do I connect New York and New Haven so people can come here to go to school at Holberton and do whatever else great things are available here, right? It's great.
And I'd also add, talk about dot connecting, right? So how I got to that problem, you had the Tweed conversation happening, which is, can we extend Tweed so that Tweed can get more flights to more places? And that's been like a 20-year shit show, right? And you had that happening pretty heavy, hot and heavy last year, and then it got squashed, and it was like all this political nonsense, and I got pretty like savvy on what happened there. So here I am seeing what Tweed has cooking, and I'm like, all right. And then at the same time, I'm hearing all about the trains, right? That in 2 years we can get a deal that from Milford down to New York, we can eat into everyone's town and get another 2 tracks, and we'll get a faster train that can go from New Haven to New York City in an hour. And I'm thinking, that's the dumbest shit I have ever heard of in my life. Right? A faster train. Does anybody know the famous Henry Ford story? Henry Ford saying, he said, if I listened to the customer, I would have made faster horses. So if we get the train done in 2 years, politically, that puts us at 2020. And then in 2030, we have a train that gets us from New Haven to New York in 1 hour. Hyperloop, which is Elon Musk's little invention that someone decided to take on, is getting piloted right now at 750 miles per hour, which is literally New Haven to New York in 13 minutes. And we're talking about 13 years away, getting there in an hour. Right? You've already got trains that are doing 200 miles an hour. Right? So to me, I'm thinking to myself, that's like coming out with IPTV in 5 years.
Right.
It's already out, right? There's already technology out, and we're talking about that. So I found it stupid, but I was like, well, Tweed is an airport, and Uber's talking about like these like places that can get masses of people out of like stadiums and fly them. So you got 30,000, 50,000, 70,000 people at a football game, and you need to get them out of there really quickly. So Uber's patenting technology now for like vertical airports that would go on top of the stadium, and then people would just load up, and you shoot them out into the areas that they got to go, and then you can get them into other Ubers from there. So I was thinking to myself, well, we got Sikorsky, and then all of a sudden the dots connect, and it's like, why don't we at least have a conversation? And why has no one had that conversation? And why are we not talking to Elon Musk and getting tunnels underneath the towns instead of fighting with them to give us a little bit of railway?
Yeah, the real pernicious thing is that 13 years and we're going to get New York down to an hour is packaged as innovation, right? It's packaged as that's a big accomplishment.
We were having that conversation in an innovation council meeting,
Yeah.
and it was the first one, and I said, "What are we doing?" Yeah. I said, this is innovation, and we're talking about faster trains. Everyone else is thinking about air and tunnels in the water. Long Island Sound is useless. There's no lobsters in there no more.
Right.
Use it.
Right.
Put a tunnel in there.
Right.